Hello everyone, this is Rob Seiden from Seiden Sidebar, and we are here broadcasting from our studio in Manhattan. Today we are very lucky to have with us Sharon Mahn, who is a very successful businesswoman, entrepreneur, philanthropist, and volunteer, among many other hats that she wears. So thank you very much, Sharon, for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Rob.
It's my pleasure. And I've known Sharon for several decades, been following her career, and she's been enormously helpful as someone connecting me with some of the movers and shakers in America for many decades. And I consider her a good friend and someone who is an inspiration, I think, to anyone, but especially to women, to understand what it's like to grow as a business person and as a human being and make a difference in the world, as well as connect you with people that you may not think you can get connected to. So with that said, Sharon, can you please just tell folks about your background and your history, and we can kind of go from there.
First of all, I don't think I can beat that opening statement. I'm going to have to hire you as my PR person. You're just wonderful. And as many great people as I know, you're one of them. And you've been so instrumental in the growth of my career as well for the past 20 years. So it's such a pleasure to be on this show. And I feel like we've gone full circle. We've been through so much together. So it's great that we're here. Thank you again for having me on the show. My background is that I always joke with everyone that I'm a lawyer by background, but I'm a recovering lawyer. I say that. I felt like being a lawyer wasn't my thing, so I delved and I parlayed that experience from law school into an entrepreneurial venture, and I've been doing legal headhunting for about 25 years now. It seems like such a long time.
So what is legal headhunting?
So I help lawyers
Is
find
that
jobs.
where you try to kill lawyers?
Feels like that sometimes. That's not really what I do. Just to say that. So I help lawyers find jobs. Sometimes I move them to law firms, I move them to companies, and sometimes I just move them out of law completely. A lot of lawyers these days have also taken the path to become a legal headhunter. But what's interesting is that back when I started out, I always joked that it was like the Seinfeld of jobs. I really didn't know what I was doing, and I fell into the job because a headhunter asked me if I wanted to be a headhunter, and that's how I pretty much learned the ropes.
Wow. So it's like taking a page out of Teddy Roosevelt's book. If you're given a task to do, you don't know how to do it, just say, yes, I can do it, and quickly learn how to do it, and you'll accomplish your goal.
That's right. Baptism by fire.
Yeah. So you went into legal recruiting. Tell us how that went, and then how you got to where you are today.
So initially when I started out, I've always enjoyed the aspect of helping people, and that's what really attracted me to the field. But back in the day, you have to remember that there were no cell phones. When I was working the London markets, this is going back, 2 decades, literally all the partners that I would call, and this is unheard of now, but they would be on vacation for the entire summer. So I would call up and trying to find a lawyer, and they'd say, well, it's May, we'll be back in September, and you can't reach us. I mean, can you imagine that happening now?
Yeah, that sounds pretty good, actually.
I should have been a lawyer in London, but I would call lawyers and just build a rapport with them and move them to different jobs. And a lot of the profession is just gaining lawyers' trust and knowing that I can help them with their career and just listening to them.
But you did some legal recruiting at some of the biggest firms in the world, didn't you?
I have.
And also little guys as well, guys and gals.
And both equally rewarding in their own way.
That's great. So then tell us about how you kind of transition also to get involved so heavily in philanthropy and volunteer work. I know you do a lot of work around the U.S. helping people who need help.
Yeah. So I pretty much followed in my parents' footsteps. It was just second nature to me because they were always helping others. So it was just something that I did at a young age. And as I grew older, there were certain causes that resonated with me more than others. I do a lot of work with the Leukemia Foundation. My mom sadly passed from leukemia.
I'm sorry.
But even before that, I was doing a lot of work running marathons and raising money for the cause. I seem to have a special place in my heart for pets, the United States veterans, and medical causes helping children.
Wow, that's amazing. The 3 great causes.
And you're really philanthropic too. I remember somebody getting a phenomenal award one time.
Yes, I remember, especially because you took a taxi That what a story that was. So I was honored in my town for volunteer work after Hurricane Sandy and these things I did with the school board. And I'm at the event, and all of a sudden someone says and this is in Long Island.
Yes.
They said there's a yellow taxi, a New York City medallion yellow taxi just pulled up to the front of the Port Washington Yacht Club, and which is where the event was being held. And I'm like, well, who would take a taxi all the way from Manhattan with the meter running? And then all of a sudden Sharon comes bolting in the room saying, Rob, I'm here. She comes in, she stays, I think you grabbed a quick glass of wine, you saw the ceremony, and then you quickly got back in the taxi. I don't even want to guess how much that taxi ride was.
When you're a New Yorker, you don't really know how to drive, so you do what you have to do. There was no Uber back then, but I was certainly not going to miss that award ceremony.
Right,
it was quite an honor for you, and it was an amazing ceremony. But when you're in New York, nobody drives in New York, so you do what you can do.
That's great. Yeah,
you hail a cab.
That's funny. Yeah, you're right. That showed that there was a need for Uber back then.
That's exactly.
It would have been half the price.
I should have started it back then. That would have been a great company to start.
So let's go from there. This day and age, 2023. The world has changed a lot since we first started as attorneys, back in the 80s. And what do you see as some of the obstacles to a professional work environment, especially for a woman coming in these days? What are some of the things that you see and some thoughts you have on that?
I always look at the stats, and coming out of law school, it's always, it seems that there are actually more women graduating from law school now than men. But what happens, and even 2 decades later, 20 years later, 84% of law firm partners are men and 16% are women.
Really? Wow.
So how does it that you start out half and half, but yet women sort of, go off the law firm partnership track? And I think the toughest part for women is just building business, just having the time to go out there and network and really build a rapport with some of their clients. And it takes time, and it's hard to do. Well,
that's a great point. So you're very good at that. You're unbelievable at that.
We love that. We love to socialize.
Yes. I remember sitting with you. We would meet. Rob, are you available at 2? And we have until 2:25. And we'd sit down and we both would speak very quickly. And within 20 minutes, we would do work that probably people do in 3 hours. And I'd walk out to a whole list of people I should be in touch with and I'd contact them. And they'd say, Sharon, of course. Yeah, Rob, I'm good to meet you. So
and we got it done, though. We got it done.
We did get it done, and it worked. It really worked. So that kind of special sauce, right, that I call it, what are some of the tips that you could say for someone who's getting started now and doesn't really know, maybe he's a little afraid, doesn't have the skills, they think. What would you advise them on how to kind of get that ball rolling?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I get asked that a lot. I think that you have to go with your strengths. If you enjoy going out to dinner or drinks like we do with everybody and meeting face to face, then do that and develop a rapport, not just with other lawyers, but dig deep into your network. You have friends from college or friends from high school or childhood friends. Find out what they're doing, connect with them, and don't just do it for purposes of business. Find out what they're doing, keep in touch with them. Talk to them on their birthdays, keep in touch with them during holidays. Now's a great time during the holidays, and really get to know them. And that's really what it is. It's really getting to know what people need and being there and being a resource for them.
And how did it make you feel when you're able to do that?
I think it feels great. I mean, that sort of lends itself also to my philanthropy work and just talking to lawyers and helping them find jobs. I mean, it's gotten to the point where I was joking before with a Gail about how I've been in this career for so long. Not only am I helping my partner clients, but now I'm helping their children.
It's amazing, yeah. Then you know you've been, when they get to the grandchildren, then we know we're really in trouble.
At some point.
But it's an interesting point. I think I really learned this from you, I think, which is that when you try to go out and develop business and make contacts, it's not so much about, what can they do for you?
That's right.
I have people come to me and say, Rob, I'm not sure what should I do to get them to understand what it is that we do as a firm. Right. How do we sell our work to potential prospects, etc. And I say to them, and this is something I think I learned from you, which is focus on what you can do to help them.
That's right.
Not on what they can do to help you. Ask them, is there something that's bothering them?
Right.
Is there something that's going on in their life? You'll figure it out speaking to them. Maybe their child needs an internship.
Right.
Maybe you can help with that.
That's right.
Maybe they need to meet with someone regarding something involved in their family life or something involved in their business life. And maybe you can make an introduction. And maybe that'll convert into them saying, hey, I want to return the favor. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but it can't hurt.
That's right. It's still a good thing. And it's always good karma. And I always feel in my life, and I know you probably feel the same way because you're very much like this. I mean, when you put out good, good comes back. It might not happen tomorrow morning or next week, but it does come back to you. And even if it doesn't, you're doing the right thing. And I think there's something that feels good about that. And when you surround yourself by good people that are equally doing what you're doing, you can't help but be with a good group of people that help one another. It just builds. It really does.
I love that. That's great. And then, so from an organizational standpoint, any techniques or anything you can share about how you were able to do that, to be able to organize your contacts and bring that into your business world?
Yeah, I think it's a matter of just really keeping in touch and just don't go to people when you need something or they need something. Be genuine, like really try to help them out and really be part of their world. And that way also you really know what they need because you really know them. And sometimes that helps because you can anticipate what they need before they even know what they need. And people love that.
Yeah. I remember you used to have all these, like you'd have a birthday party at the steakhouse down in Battery Park, and you'd invite all these people. And I remember like, how do you know these folks? Oh, I don't know them, Rob. I don't know them yet. But they all showed up, friends of friends of friends. Right. And the next thing you know, you're friends with like all these other people and their potential clients or prospects.
I have so many funny stories. There's someone that I met. I'm going to mention his name, Robert Ray, who is a dear friend of mine, and he was a guy that was he was on the Monica Lewinsky special prosecution case, and big lawyer, great guy. And he came to one of my parties. He just stopped by, and I think he was actually probably maybe even dating someone else, but he met literally his wife at one of my parties.
Really?
So, and we still do business together, and even the ex-girlfriend's friends with him. It all worked out. Everybody's still friends. We're all still networking together.
That's great.
If you could do that, where you can get the ex-girlfriend to be friends and the wife is friends, and we're all friends together and doing business, you've hit a home run.
Yeah, that's great. So you're not only creating business opportunities, but also you're getting people to get married. Now you're taking it to another level.
You do everything for them, a personal life to professional life, whatever they need.
But when you first started out, right, because someone might be listening and say, wow, this sounds really, hard. They've been able to do something. It sounds really complicated. When you first started out, did you doubt yourself in the beginning, or was it easy right away?
No. When you're young, I mean, you're coming out of law school, and it's hard enough just to learn the trade of law, just to practice law, let alone thinking to myself, okay, now I'm going to have clients that will repeatedly come back to me, and I'm going to be an authority figure. Like when you're 25 years old, you're not thinking that. Like half the time I went to court, I'd look at the other side, the opposition, and they were like 50, which I thought was so old back then. I'm like, that's like my dad yelling at me. Like it's scary to be a lawyer, let alone find business. But at some point, you gain your footing, you learn the practice of law, you develop, and you have to be good at your job. Clearly, you have to be good at what you do. And that's, you can't just have clients and not be good at what you do and just be friendly. You have to be great at what you do. But at the same time, you have to start networking with everyone. Everyone can be a potential source of business. You just never know. And in my particular circumstances, when I was first practicing law at a young age, my dad, a little nepotism never hurts, but my dad was tough. I said to my dad, you've been working with State Farm. I'd love to get them as a client. And my dad said, you know what? You can get them as a client, but you got to earn it. I go, are you kidding me? Like, can't you just make a call? He goes, no. He goes, you're going to pitch for the client. And I actually did that. I was working at my old law firm, St. John and Wayne. All the big partners were around me. I'm 26 years old. I'm scared to death. I'm actually pitching to the client. And I know some of the people at State Farm because I grew up with them, but it's much different when you're actually a businesswoman pitching to them. You're not just a little kid that grew up with these people. Now you're pitching to them. And your partners are watching you, and there's so much pressure. But I pitched, and I won the business. And, my dad was sitting there taping it. He was taping it like I was a kindergartner going on my first day of class. I'm like, really, Dad, is that truly necessary? Like, really? I still probably have it on tape just in case anyone doubts me. But I pitched. I was scared to death. I was blushing. I was shaking, I said, did anyone notice? Clearly, as I watched the video, people did notice. I was bright red. I looked like Rudolph. I'm just sitting there just scared to death. But you have to start somewhere. And if you don't ask, you don't get anywhere. People just assume, they don't want to ask anyone. They're afraid to make the ask. Take the first step. And if you fail, so what? You try again. If you don't make it the first time around, you keep asking till you get to yes. It's a little bit of a sales mindset, but it works, and you have to be brave, and that's part of the business. You got to be brave, and no risk, no reward.
That's it. Wow, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, no, you got to be brave. That's I think this generation of young people coming out now. It seems that They're used to getting all their information on the internet and TikTok and all these different things. And when you put them face to face with a human being, it's not so easy. They don't have the experience. They send a message. They're not looking at the reaction to the person on the other end of the message because they're not physically there.
Right.
So what do you think about that? How does this generation, kind of get that courage if they don't have the experience from a young age like you were getting?
I think about that all the time. I think about the generation coming now out of law school that had to go to law school through COVID, and they weren't able to make the connections. And I think that's why, I'm kind of split about this remote working, because on one hand, I think that, to have a break and only work 3 times a week and get those 2 extra days at home to work, it's beneficial. But at the same time, I just think about our careers. Like you said, we grew up especially growing up in Manhattan, and the mentors that you have and the sources and the resources that you have and the way you're able to bond with people. I worry that the next generation coming up doesn't have that skill set because they don't have the face-to-face and the interaction like we did. Even things that are simple, like your boss is working late and he says, look, I can't go to the Rangers game, take the tickets.
Right.
And you take your friends, you bond, you have that experience. How do you do that if you're a kid coming out of school, but you were working out of your parents' basement and you live there and you're not interacting with anyone? What do you do?
Exactly. I agree with you 100%. There's a lot being missed by not being in the office, right?
Yeah.
So you have that versus this generation that came out of COVID, and now they're like, well, this is the normal.
Right.
2 days, 3 days, or just completely at home.
Right.
It's probably something that all the law firms and other businesses are struggling with right now. How do you think it's going to shake out?
I think you're doing that too, because you really want to give your people the opportunity to bond and network. And business development is not necessarily done just by, coming to the office. You're bonding, and they're looking for mentors, and they're looking to you, who's a very successful lawyer, and saying, how do I do it? They're not going to learn that on Zoom. They're not going to learn that on Microsoft Meet. They're going to learn that by seeing you in action and watching people make mistakes. It's not just all the good stuff that people do. You always think, you watch these TV shows like Suits, or back in our day it was LA Law. Boy, I'm dating myself. But you go back and, everything's always clean. But, you have to learn the nuances of law, not just how to practice law, but how do you interact with clients? And what happens when you don't get the client? What do you do when you fail? How do you come back from failure? Because you're going to fail. Everyone fails. And it's how you come back from failure that counts.
Right. Amen.
Right? And you're not going to learn that. You're not going to read that on TikTok. You're not going to learn that from a video or a how-to in 12 minutes. You're going to learn that by coming to work, and you have to experience it.
Yeah. So if you were talking to a new lawyer, right, just passed the bar exam, what would you tell them? Would you say you got to go to work 5 days a week, or would you tell them, what advice would you give?
First of all, I would tell them to be easy on yourself. I think a lot of people put a lot of pressure on themselves when they come out of, they're comparing themselves to their peers, and they see their peers at a certain spot. They might not be there. And as a runner myself, I always say, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And get out there and just realize that you're young. You're going to fail. You're going to have to fail to learn how to do well. And if you don't fail, you're not going to learn. That's part of your growth.
So there's this fear of failure
Yes.
that these kids have.
It stifles you. They don't want to. They're so afraid of failing.
Yeah.
They're so afraid of, everyone jokes about everyone gets a trophy culture, but like if you're not used to failing and you see failure as just a big, huge problem in your life, you're never going to learn how to cope with it and how to move on.
But let's explore that. That's a really great point. When we were young, if we failed, we kind of could fail by ourselves. Maybe our friends would know, or our colleagues.
Right.
Now the whole world knows because of the internet and because of social media.
Yes.
So how do we get around that? It's easy to tell these youngsters, well, yeah, just don't be afraid. But they're like, well, what do you mean? The whole world's going to know if I, do something in court and I get reprimanded by the judge.
Right. I say, look for mentors. Look at people who, as much as we'd like to say we're very successful, we sit here years later and it seems so easy. But at the same time, there's a series of failures that led us to the top.
Yeah, there's scars on our back.
There's scars on our back. There's scars everywhere. My whole body is like one big scar. I'm walking around as a scar. I'm just one big battle wound. But I'm telling you. But you know what? You get up, and that's part of the theory of find mentors. And if you're not showing up at work, find them somewhere else. Read books. Immerse yourself in people that you want to emulate and figure out how they did it. I guarantee with every book or Kindle that you read, there's somebody that you admire that is going to talk about a setback in their life. First of all, it makes for a great book. If everything was great, that doesn't make for a very good book, right? So you want to hear about what tragedies did they face, how did they overcome it, and how did they get to be where they are.
So the mentors. So you think that if these kids coming out now have a mentor, they can help walk them through it.
Absolutely.
So when they do hit the landmine, and there is a little bit of a blow up, the mentor will help guide them through it without them debilitating and going backwards.
Absolutely. And even in life now, at my young age, I still have mentors and people that I look up to. And, you keep finding and seeking out new mentors at each step where you want to go. And I think it's always important to keep growing, always look for mentors, never stagnate, always keep looking to be where you want to be, who's done it, how do they do it, get to know them, befriend them. And that's the advantage I think that young kids also have these days is that, they have LinkedIn. You can reach out.
Right.
And if you're earnest and you say, look, I'm 20-something years old, I'm out of law school, I'd love to hear your story. Let me buy you a cup of coffee. Or if they're too afraid to meet in person, let's have a Zoom call and chat.
And I think that is a very important point also. People, especially younger people, they are maybe intimidated. They think, oh, why would this person, successful, lawyer or whatever it may be, want to spend time with me for a cup of coffee? Why would they want to share their experience with me? They're so busy, they're above it, etc.
Yeah.
But that's not true, right?
No, not at all. I love it. And I just had an interview with my, I went to Bloomberg College, and I just did an interview with them. And they said, is there any parting thoughts that you want to say? And I said, yes. I said, this is my email address. Reach out to me. If you're in New York, I'll buy you lunch. Come chat with me. If you want to talk about your career and you're willing to make the effort to get into Manhattan, I'm willing to take you out to lunch.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. A lot of successful people got that way because they have a good personality, they're good people,
yes.
and it helped in their rise.
Yes.
It's very rare to find someone like a Steve Jobs who was brilliant and very successful, but supposedly the employees say he was not a nice guy. He was really the opposite. He was an SOB.
Yeah.
But so therefore, if you know that most people who are successful are outgoing, are friendly, are kind of open and welcoming, then it's probable that they will be happy to. Like if someone contacts you, someone contacts me, asks me for career advice, I'm more than happy to meet with them.
That's right.
Right? So are you. I'm sure
absolutely.
most people who are our age around there, successful people, want to do it.
They do. And we can learn just as
much. It's good for our
from
egos.
It's great for our egos. It's great for our egos. We could tell stories all day. We could be on this podcast all day if we wanted to.
Yeah, I think we're on
only half
overtime.
an hour, really.
Yeah.
But we learn equally as much from the people that we talk to. I mean, I learned so much from young people. Half the time I'm asking my niece, who's 17 years old, like, how do you tag somebody? I mean, just the basics. I mean, I'm surprised I can even log onto my Gmail account. I mean, they know so much and they're so much further advanced.
It's a two-way street.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a good point.
And they can teach us so much too. And they can also let us know, look, maybe that was great for your generation, but that doesn't work with us. And I'd love to hear that. I want to know what they think because that's the next generation coming up. That's our succession plan.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point.
Yeah.
So let's talk now a little bit more about your global presence, Sharon, because you have so much time on your hands because you're involved in very little amount of activity. But how do you find time? For example, I know you're a marathon runner, and tell us about that. Where have you run marathons?
So I think marathon runner is a strong word. As long as I get over the finish line at some point, that's my goal. But all joking aside, I've run the 5 biggest marathons in the world all over the age of 40.
Wow!
And I've done them all for charity. And
amazing. My
goal is to do the Abbott Marathon 6. And so far, I've done 5 of them. And in March, I'm going to do Tokyo, hopefully, God willing.
Wow. So that was what, Berlin? Chicago?
Berlin and London. And those 2 were crazy because I did them back to back because 2 years ago in COVID, they moved the London Marathon to the fall. So I ended up doing Berlin and London literally in the same week.
Oh my God.
So, and I can't even do a marathon in the best of days. So doing 2 marathons in 1 week, that was strenuous, but I did it. But it was for charity. So that's what gave me the motivation to do it.
Amazing. Wow.
But I've done Boston, I've done Chicago, I did New York, and Tokyo is in March.
Amazing. Now, let's talk about your traveling. You were recently in Paris?
I was 2 weeks ago.
So how are things there? What are people saying about being a lawyer or being a worker in New York?
So it's interesting. Paris is also a big city like New York and very diverse. I was there for a New Jersey trial lawyers conference, and I was just listening to people talk about New York, and everyone said, "Oh, you live in New York?" And I said, "Yes." And they said, "Isn't it scary? How could you be in New York? Are you trying to get out? Are you going to Florida like everyone else? Do you really live there, or do you live in Florida and you're just visiting New York?" I said, "No, I live and work in New York. I've been there 20 years." And they're like, "Are you afraid?" And I said, look, as with everyone in New York, I always tell people, you always have to be vigilant no matter what is going on. I mean, we've lived through 9/11, we've lived through Sandy, we've lived through, the market crash, we've lived through, craziness
COVID,
and everything. Shutdown, blackouts, earthquakes, you name it, we've lived through it. How are we still alive as I say this? I wonder out loud how we're even still living. And I just tell people, look, when you come to New York, you have to be vigilant and you have to take care as you would any other time.
But is it much different than, say, being in Berlin or Paris or Sao Paulo?
I think New York's taking a hit because I think during COVID, I think the crime statistics went up a bit. There's a lot going on in New York, as we all know. Not to take political sides at all, but just saying that New York is experiencing, some issues. But that being said, I've in 20 years, I've never had a problem in New York. Of course, now that I say that, I'm going to go get robbed as I walk out of the studio. Only because I said
Look, we're going to have her sign a waiver, guys, when she leaves here that we're not responsible. No, I'm only kidding. I'll walk you to your cab. But no, I agree with you. I take the subway all the time.
Me too. It's the best way to get around.
There's no issue there. There's millions of people going back and forth. But that 1 in a million, the media will put it on the front page and everyone will think it's a war zone here.
Well, it's also, too, I mean, I hate to say this, but you have to be smart. And some people can't help the time that they take the subways because they might be working or they might be, actors or something working late hours. But I think also the time that you take the subway, you have to be careful, too. If you're taking it at 3:30 in the morning coming back from a party, you're likely.
So let's do some top 5 tips for staying alive in New York City. All right.
Again,
you want to go first?
Now you're asking me this like I'm that safety pro. You are the safety pro, my friend.
No,
you're the one with the.
You have the 20 years experience being in New York. You're an expert.
I love New York, and I'm a diehard New Yorker, and I will always be an advocate for New York. And I love New York. I think that it is the best city in the world. And during the holidays, there's no better place in the world than this place.
Yes, that's true. Okay. So maybe the top 5 things, Broadway shows, we should be talking about that instead of the top 5 things to avoid. Okay, let's kind of wind down a little now because I think we're going to get in trouble otherwise. With give us some tips, if you would, about people who are working in a professional environment these days, and let's say they want to negotiate with their employer. What's the best approach to do that this day and age from your experience?
I would say get educated. I know in New York right now, the law is that you're not really supposed to tell your salary and the employers can't ask. But that being said, you want to know your price point. I would say as a recruiter, talk to a recruiter because we can give invaluable advice. And this is what we do. We're able to tell you what you can command in the market, what you might want to go for. Also, you don't want to ask sometimes for too much. You don't want to make, you don't want to make sure that you want to make sure that
pricing
you're
yourself out of the market.
Exactly. And you want to make sure that you're within the zone. But I'd say just get educated. There's things online that you can look at. There's other websites that you can go to find out a little bit more about where your price point may be and talk to recruiters. Be friends with recruiters because we'll help you your whole career.
Right. No, but not all of them are as nice and informed as you are. But let's say you then have this information, right? So now you sit down with your employer. And what is the approach? Because you don't want the employer to think, "Oh, are they shaking me down?" So what's from your experience a good approach?
So I think when you're younger, a lot of the law firms are pretty much lockstep, so you know what you can command. I think it's that when you get older in your career, more seasoned, and it also depends on do you have business. It depends on a lot of factors on how you're going to price what your compensation is worth and what you're worth. And I think that also when you get to that level, it's sort of like you need a recruiter. It's like a baseball pro. Like you wouldn't see, Derek Jeter back in the day negotiating his own deal. You want someone like an agent to represent you because they know the market, they know what they can command, they know what they can push and not push.
And a recruiter will do that.
A recruiter will do that. They'll negotiate on your behalf.
Interesting.
It's kind of like a lawyer. Like he who has himself as a lawyer has a fool for a lawyer.
Yeah.
It's a little bit along those lines, although not as harshly. But if you have a recruiter that can help you, they can develop a strategy for you, and they can actually let you know what you're worth and develop a plan so that you know going into a job who are your clients, how much you think you're worth with the clients, and they can help you develop like a solid plan that can make you most marketable and teach you how to market yourself, which is important.
And how about creating like a plan for a book of business?
Yeah.
How important is that?
Very important.
Tell us what that is.
I think everyone, from the moment you get out of law school, you need a life plan. Not just a business plan to negotiate what you're worth, but coming out of law school as you're negotiating and learning your craft, you should know which contacts to keep in touch with. And also, for goodness sake, don't keep hanging out with lawyers. Hang out with your friends who have MBAs, are going to be corporate CEOs at some point. Hang out with those that are entrepreneurs, because those are going to be the money makers and your potential clients that will pay you as a lawyer. So you want to develop a plan and say, okay, so-and-so is working here. And as you get more seasoned in your career, you will start contacting those people. And you really, when you make a plan, sometimes you really don't realize who your contacts are. And when you sit down and actually do a plan, it's a nice exercise to discipline yourself and say, I have more contacts than I actually know. I'm more valuable than I thought I was.
So what about people who say, well, I'm really a lawyer that I'm able to do the work, but I don't really want to get involved in doing business development. I just want to go to court. I just want to sit and write a brief. And I'm not interested in that. I wouldn't be good at that. What would you tell them? Are they limiting their career path?
I think they are. I think they are, because as law firms get rid of what is called the lockstep model, back in the day, it used to be that you would work for a firm, you'd work your entire life, and at the end, you get the gold watch, you get a pension, and that would be it. That is not the way law firms are nowadays. There's very few firms that do that. You have to always be looking out for business. You have to constantly be selling yourself. I think it helps that you're a great lawyer and you're very good at your craft, maybe for the first 10 years of your career. But at some point, as you become older in your career, you become expensive from a salary standpoint. So you have to justify that salary. And the way to do that is to have clients. And really, that's what other law firms are looking for. They're looking for your book of business. It's called a book of business. And as you move, you want to say, look, I have these clients. This is going to cover my compensation. And I think it's important to always be marketing yourself and never stop. Never get out of the game.
That's invaluable. So book of business, what is that? You write out like what it is that you think you can develop as potential clients?
Yes, it's like a business plan. And what you're doing is identifying potential clients. And you can do that by saying, I have a great relationship, I've done good work with, make up a company with Fiserv, and you want to keep them as a client. But on the other hand, you might have a friend who you are close with, that you've done legal work with in the past, maybe a few deals here and there, but you're seeing that they're developing, their company might IPO, and you say, I can bring business from that company. So you want to identify all of your potential contacts and really keep track of it your whole life. You want to keep in touch with everybody, and you want to keep that business plan current, and you always want to be working on that. That is your brand, and that's what's going to sell you to your employers for the rest of your life.
Wow, amazing. So if people wanted to reach you, what's the best way? Do you have a website, a social media account? Can you tell them?
I'm on Instagram. I have also a website, and also my cell phone is public as well.
Okay. Wow, great. Well, this has been amazing.
So much fun. I always enjoy getting together
By
with you.
far, this has been the best podcast in the history of mankind, womankind. But no, I really want to thank you, Sharon, for coming in, taking time out of your busy day, being part of the Seiden Sidebar podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been so much fun.
Yes, we'll have to do it again sometime.
I would love that.
So thank you all for listening and for watching and for tuning in to this great episode. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. If you enjoyed what you saw today, send in ideas, and we'll see you again next time. Thank you.